Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared Podcast.
Hey, everybody, Mark and Steve on the PBSE Podcast. This is episode 269. This title, I know my partner is positively changing, but how can I stay with a man who did such horrible things in his addiction? Very powerful title, something that betrayed partners deal with all the time, and something that we addicts deal with. How can she stay with a man who did all the things that I did? I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that one. But this came in from a partner, and so we're just going to summarize what she sent us. It was nicely detailed, which we always appreciate, getting as much detail as we can. But they had a whole history of his addiction. He kept it hidden and secret the whole time, which often happens. And finally, it all came out, and he got into what appears to be really good, solid recovery. It looks like they're working with a therapist. He's involved with groups and just doing really well. But as often happens, she's looking at him going, is this real? Mm-hmm. He just got sober. And since discovery, he just decided to not do any of these behaviors anymore. And he's in solid recovery. And man, he's just killing it. And it's like he's never looking back. And I think she says they're about 9 months in. For example, they were married in a church and he portrayed that he was really religious. Well, what she found out was that he wasn't. And he'd been hiding his pessimism and his disdain for religion. He'd been hiding it all these years of their marriage. Now, all of a sudden in recovery, he's religious and he's into it. So he's sober, he's religious, he's awesome. And she's saying, does it really work like this? Have you guys seen somebody just suddenly change like this and we're all good to go? Is this normal? So that's her first question. And then her second one, she says, is a more nuanced question. And this has to do with all the triggers that she's encountering. And we see this a lot with betrayed partners. Unfortunately, this addict's behaviors involved real people. And it sounds like they were friends. So it looks like there may have been female affair partners or sexual partners that were actually friends of theirs or hers. Now he's in recovery. They're still in that same social world where they interact with these people. And she describes it as, I just have a quote, ick feeling that I was put in all these embarrassing situations that we now encounter with these people because he had to go have his thrill with all of them. And then she gets really raw. And I feel this. Part of this came from my wife. Part of this comes from partners we deal with. The disgust I have for these specific behaviors is something I want to heal from. But will this feeling ever go away? Can betrayal this deep really heal? Maybe the more appropriate question is, do I want to be with someone who could have done these things in the first place? I'm feeling a little stuck and would appreciate your thoughts. I want to make the best decision for my family. If my husband can maintain this recovery that looks so good, maybe he can be the man that I got glimpses of along the way. I want to raise my kids in a healthy, whole family. I want to give my kids the family they deserve if I can have the husband I deserve. But will these behaviors ever become a distant memory? Really powerful submission. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, really great questions. I had a middle school teacher or a junior high school teacher who used to use the phrase, we're to keep this neat, sweet, and cheap to keep. I still don't know what the cheap to keep part meant. I still have not figured that out, but we are going to keep this short and sweet. So we're going to hit this head on and we'll knock this out because there are some real good questions here. And I think some pretty direct answers today will be both the way to handle this and also probably be refreshing for all of you because these podcasts we've been so long of late. So we're gonna mix it up and make it a little bit of a shorter one. So, first question: do you see addicts fully step into recovery like this and never look back? That is a great question.
It is.
And the answer to that is I have seen it, and I know Mark has too.
I have occasionally.
I the big thing with this, that would not freak me out as a partner. If I'm working with a partner in my office and we're dealing with this dynamic, there are a couple of things that I'm going to go through to kind of assess the validity of this. The first is going to be time and consistency.
Yep.
Right? How long is this actually sustainable? Many who work in the addiction world are familiar with a term that may sound weird to some called the pink cloud. And what that kind of refers to is the new, novel, kind of exciting, thrilling novelty place of initial recovery from some sort of a compulsion or addiction. It gets used a lot in chemical addiction recovery circles, but also applies here. And for many addicts in and of itself, it can almost feel kind of like an addiction. Oh, this new exciting thing. I'm feeling so many good things. I'm feeling
we call it the pink cloud.
Yes. I'm feeling all these awesome things. It's so great. This is wonderful. Like, oh, this is just everything's new and bright and amazing. And that's all really good. But remember, a big part of addiction for many of the guys we work with in the first place is the novelty factor. And so one of the things that you have to wait for with this process to determine this, there are just some things like trust, in terms of trust being rebuilt or actually being able to determine authentic trajectories, that it just takes time to see. The proof is in the pudding.
That's right.
Right.
We have other guys who, Steve, you and I, well, we were guilty of this. Our wives had finally reached the end of their ropes, and we knew if we didn't get serious and do something really, really intense, we were going to lose the relationship or marriage. So we got serious.
Yeah.
And doing it for that reason will carry you for a time, but if that is the main impetus, it won't last. Now she says they're 9 months post discovery day.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's been this consistent for 9 months, that's a pretty good sign.
Yeah.
Truly,
it is.
And is he being honest? See, this is where it gets tricky. I've had guys hide their addictions and do quote everything right for quite a long period. Then it comes out that they were never really in solid recovery, that the sobriety date isn't what they said it was. And I don't want to say that to taint this situation, because this could be legitimate.
Yeah.
But like you said, time will tell. The proof's in the pudding, right? Is he consistently being transparent? Is he coming back from group and sharing what he learned? Does he have an outside support system he's engaging with regularly? What do the other parts of the relationship look like? There's so much to gauge this from.
Well, that was the other big thing I was going to mention, and you kind of just touched on it right there, Mark, is this emotional insight piece. Mark and I have been doing this for a long time, and we work as recovering master bullshitters. We've worked with many master bullshitters over time. Addicts are master manipulators.
Yep, we are.
And we don't even mean that nefariously. Addicts, you cannot get to a point where you're like Mark or I, where you're 30, 40, 50 years old and a productive member of society and keep something under wraps unless you are hella good at keeping things in. I mean, it's just the reality of the thing.
Oh yeah.
We Mark and I often talk about how we are so good at compartmentalizing, for example, like the ideal, if I'm the CIA and I'm recruiting, I'm going to go like to 12-step meetings and recruit addicts because
Absolutely.
we are disturbingly good at some of the traits required to do that kind of work. So, and not in a good way. So the other piece of this is, and Mark hit on it, is the insight piece. Right? It's because a guy who is in serious long-term lasting recovery will not just be able to do the observable behaviors of recovery, he will be gaining progressively over time emotional awareness and an understanding of how it's benefiting him, how it's benefiting his partner, and where it's taking him and leading him. Okay. Yeah. Mindfulness and emotion and that kind of insight is, being frank, the hardest part of any master bullshitter to fake.
Okay? Yes.
And again, we're not even saying he's doing that nefariously. Some guys hit the pink cloud and they would swear up and down that they are like good to go. I've seen Jesus. I'm good to go. And they feel that way. Mark and I felt that way. But again, it's a lot of it's that not newness and novelty and not really a grounded recovery. And so one of those ways is, like Mark said, he ought to be able to progressively be sharing, why am I doing the things that I'm doing, how it's actually impacting me. He should be growing in skill sets like empathy and being able to see within you, and adopting new paradigms, entertaining new realities, hearing hard things, right? These are all skill sets that,
He should
again,
be
an addict
getting
can't
in
mimic.
deep touch with his emotions, right? How is he
Yes.
not doing with sobriety, but how about his anger? Or if he used to be stoic and silent, how's he doing with that? How is he at telling the truth at all costs? Are your check-ins where he's sharing deep emotional things in an honest way that he went through today? Has he shared any struggles he's had with regard to his old scanning or voyeuring or lustful thoughts? Or did it just all magically go away suddenly? Right? I mean, all of
Yeah,
this is part of that.
absolutely. So hopefully that gives you a really good starting point. Like I said, that is where if I'm a partner, that's where we would recommend you be leaning, is
Yes.
because, again, those are the things that not only are difficult to fake, but those insights are the things that sustain a guy in real
That's
recovery.
what sustains, yes.
Because when the chips are down and inevitably the compulsion or the temptations or whatever return, that is what determines trajectory. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
So, okay. All right. Moving on. So, the next question here, right? I want to give my kids the family they deserve if I can have the husband I deserve. But will these behaviors ever become a distant memory?
And
So, in other words, like, yeah, go ahead, Mark.
can I ever overcome the deep betrayal of all the horrible things that this man is capable of that came
Mm,
out in
yeah.
discovery that he actually was engaging in and with friends of ours, women
Mm,
that I still have to associate with on a daily basis, right? Can I stay with this guy? How can I ever heal from such a thing?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are really, really good questions. So the first thing that we ought to say here, okay, um, and the question is posed here, right? Can deep betrayal ever really heal? Right. And there are things to keep in mind with that. There are a couple of rules anytime we talk about betrayal on the program that you have to keep in mind, right? Betrayal is always in the eyes of the beholder and takes, and those of us who have experienced trauma, we take on many different levels of it. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's both, sometimes it's spiritual, right? Trauma can look like many different things. So mapping that out and figuring out for a partner the ways in which this has really impacted me is really the most critical first step, right? We have to assess the damage,
Yes.
right? If a
Yes.
if a person's been through a car wreck, what's the very first thing that a paramedic does? Okay, where are the biggest wounds? What are they causing? What needs to be treated first? And
Yes.
mostly the same thing has to happen. But then the other piece of this that is critical, and this is probably the biggest barrier I would say with my clients, just speaking for myself, that a lot of partners oftentimes struggle with. We will get so invested in this recovery process from trauma, but too many don't even know what that really means.
Yes.
Um, because oftentimes, I mean, I know I've thought this when I have experienced trauma in the past, after my dad died, when I would ask myself, how am I ever going to heal from this? What was my brain thinking? Well, how am I ever going to get to a place where my dad's somehow back here and I'm in a happy, good place again? And that, unfortunately, as unfair and as tragic as it is not a realistic point of arrival for healing, because
Right.
he's not coming back in this life, right?
Or
He is
when
gone.
will I cease to have any of these memories?
Yes, same thing.
This won't be there anymore.
Yeah, for the emotional trauma victim, right? Too many emotional trauma victims think they look at this process and they think, okay, so the standard of measure is I will go back to a pre-trauma state.
Mm,
That is not accurate, whether
no.
you're talking about losing a dad or going through betrayal trauma in a marriage or whatever the case may be. Trauma, anyone who knows how to do trauma work and any therapist worth their salt will tell you the journey through trauma involves a journey of arriving and cultivating what we call post-traumatic growth, which means more or less you are moving through the trauma, right? Healing doesn't make us forget, nor does it undo the damage. What it does imply is it means we are transforming and growing through the processing, addressing, and acceptance of what has happened.
Yes.
Okay. That is post-traumatic growth. Developing new worldviews and paradigms. And I'll just say those pieces again because there's a lot behind those, right? Processing, addressing, and accepting what has happened, and coming to a place of new reality. When you look
Yes.
at the Kubler-Ross model of grief, because oftentimes trauma is a grieving process, the growth from trauma. We go through all these different steps in the Kubler-Ross model of grief, and not in a linear fashion like we used to be taught. It's kind of a pinball machine. But at the end, where are we trying to land? At progressive and more sustainable and more concrete grounded levels of what we call acceptance. Here's the new reality as
The
it
new
stands.
reality. Yep, I live in a new reality.
And finding joy and happiness in that new realm.
In the new realm. Hey, everybody. PBSE Podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
Now, she asked a question which a lot of partners will legitimately voice, which is so real. But now, with all of this coming out, with me finally knowing who this man is and what he has done and everyone that's been involved, my life is one giant trigger. How in the world am I supposed to deal with that? Like everyone I see, everywhere I go, so much of it is one big trigger. And Steve, you and I talk about this whole concept of what we call reframing, which doesn't mean we try to make it go away. It doesn't mean that we're somehow not live in the real world. We do. But this now starts to become based on new truths and new realities. Because what does everything around this betrayed partner mean? I often say to the brain, meaning is everything. And I had an original mentor who told me this phrase that I mused on it for years before I started to understand it. He said, Mark, the past means what it means. And then he would just pause and just stop there, leaving you hanging. Well, yeah, that's what I know. The past means what it means. But then he would say, until it means something different. And that's one of the keys for betrayed partners in healing. I know the past is the past, but what does it mean to me now? What filter or pair of glasses am I putting on to look at it? To look at these people, these women that were involved, right? I get to decide on that filter. I get to decide on that pair of glasses. I get to step into this place where I can decide that these very opposing realities can coexist in my world,
Yes.
right?
Well, and I think a big part of that is and I love what Mark said at the beginning. Ladies, this is not about, well, just change your attitude.
No,
This is not a Bob Ross discussion where we're going to
no,
paint some little pretty trees and just make it go away. Like
no.
what we're talking about is the growth comes from verifiable changes, both in the other person, if possible, but not required, but within it. Well, it is for the relationship to heal. But as far as your own healing goes, within you. So, for example, this is just one example that we'll give really quick. One of the biggest struggles for trauma victims to overcome is seeing new potential threats, not through the eyes of what we call the child mind. And what we mean when we say child mind, another way to say that might be post or pre-betrayal mind, right? We hear from partners all the time. I was completely blindsided by this. I can never go through that again. I was naive. I was all these things. And those are all probably true. But what Mark and I work with partners on, this is one reality that's different, is no matter, even if he doesn't change at all, you are irreparably shifted by this experience. Now, some of that means healing and some of that means overcoming, but there are healthy elements to that that can potentially be leveraged for your good, right? If I put my hand, if my little daughter were to put her hands on a stove and burn herself, that's going to suck in a lot of ways. But at the same time, what could be pulled from that? What are the silver linings? My daughter's going to be more cautious the next time she touches a stove. I might be more cautious as a parent on how to navigate her around a stove. She might start wearing those mitten thingies when she's around the stove, right? Like lots of things can be pulled from post-traumatic growth that change the reality. So in other words, for a partner, helping them to see, because what's the traumatized brain saying? You can't go through that again because the way you went through this before was absolutely devastating, and here are all the reasons why. But what the traumatized brain oftentimes doesn't take into account is what? You are in no way, shape, or form the same woman you were a year ago,
No.
or 5 years ago, or
Nope.
10 years ago. You are stronger, better, faster, quicker, more resilient, more adaptable, more knowledge-based. You know more. You are not the same person. And therefore, logic, forget even the emotional realm, logic dictates that you are going to, if that were to happen again, or these experiences were to happen again, you are not going into it emotionally naked like you were before. You're armed to the teeth with all sorts of knowledge and tools and everything else. I hope
Yes.
that makes sense the way
No,
we're
it
saying
does.
that.
And it's natural for the really, pain-based, just shock-based. I can't take this ever again. And what you find in the healing process is women will come to the place where they say, it would absolutely be devastating if it happened again, but I can take it. This is
Yes.
not going to be the same experience twice.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that's a big part of the healing process. Now, she also said, how can I stay with a man who has done all of these horrible things? And this was really poignant for me as an addict because this is very much the case for me. I mean, let's just say it straight up. I tainted and poisoned my wife's view of me in some really significant ways when all this crap came out. She doesn't see me the same way today. She can't. I've said I hid from her. I was the stealthiest addict you can imagine, and hid from her for the first 15 years of our marriage, all kinds of crap.
Well, you just said something really good, Mark, that I wanted to hit on. You said she can't see me that same way. And I would even expand on that. She shouldn't.
She shouldn't.
She
Thank you.
shouldn't.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, she shouldn't see me the same way. And so you look at that and say, well, Mark, didn't that forever taint the way she sees you at all? How could she continue in a relationship where she now sees this ugly, Mr. Hyde side of you, and on top of it, you lied about it and kept it hidden all that time? How could she continue on with a man like that?
Mhm.
Now, I can tell you how, and we've talked about that. We have talked about that hard. We've had that hard discussion many times. Here's what she has said to me. Well, I want you to know that when we first met and I first got to know you, I saw the potential in you. I saw the best parts of you. They were immature and they were undeveloped, but I did see them. And I have seen those things in you this whole time. Now, when all the truth came out, was that shocking and devastating? And did it really cause me to step back and say, ooh, who is this guy? Yes. But now here's the key. But she said, I am doing and have done enough of my own personal work. I know who I am as a woman. I know what's authentic to me. I know what I want and need going forward. And I have chosen to believe in your potential and the things that you've been showing me, the evidence-based things that you've been doing in your recovery behaviors. That's enough for me to say, I'd like to hang around to see what this man can grow into. And he's shown me enough that I have some hope that that's possible. And it's authentic to me to stay here, to continue to invest and see where it goes. Now, that was for her. There are other partners, Steve, that you and I have worked with, where when they get healthy and really are not making decisions in an anger place or a desperation place or any other place, they're making decisions from a truly healthy, authentic, healing person place. Some say, you know what? No, it's not authentic to me to stay with this man, and I don't have enough left in me to wait and see. Some decide that. But again, from a healthy space, from having done months and months or even years of their personal work, where they feel that like they're making the decision from a really higher evolved, truly authentic place, they look at it and then they decide. We don't know where she is in that process. We don't know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, and that's going to be the key, right? And I really like how we talked about, like, I shouldn't be seen the same way, right? If
No.
these two people stay together in this relationship, you won't see it the same way. You shouldn't.
Mm-mm.
We are evidence-based beings, right? We are constantly forming and framing and reframing our realities based on what we learn. And just like the stove analogy, being burned by the stove doesn't mean that the stove automatically needs to go to the scrap heap.
Right.
Maybe, but maybe not, right? Maybe it's the way we engage and interact with the stove. Maybe the stove can change, right? Maybe the stove can be a whole new thing if we allow it to be, right? There are all sorts of possibilities, but embracing this idea that it's going to be different is not only something for every spouse, and we know it's painful how we're talking about it because there is a grieving process around that. The grieving process opens up the whole new vistas as something different.
Yeah,
Right?
there has
Because
been a loss, a
there
horrible,
has,
devastating
absolutely.
loss, a death. We've had partners say, this has been the death of the relationship I thought I had. It's
Yep,
dead,
absolutely.
right? But they come
Absolutely.
back and say, okay, I will never see him the same again. My wife does not see me the same after all the stuff came out. She will never see me the same. That's
Yeah.
never going back to her pre-discovery view of Mark.
Yep. Well, as we kind of finish this up, right? Because part of her question was, how can I stay with a man who's done all these horrible things? And we'll just tell you straight up, unless changes are made that facilitate him becoming compatible with your authentic direction, wants, and needs, and unless you are making changes to do your own healing work, you can't.
You can't. Right. You're
Right?
right.
That's the reality.
You can't.
You can't. And nor should you.
Right.
There needs to be shifting that takes place, right? And so, a couple of questions that we throw at partners in this situation. One, are you able to still see the quote unquote raw potential in him for change and growth, kind of like what Mark was alluding to, right? If so, what changes would he need to make in your purview to bring about those in a way that resonates? Again, that's not you working his recovery. This is talking about, are those changes, can he bring those about and share those with you and exemplify and display those in a way that creates compatibility? But even if not, is the discovery of this potential possible, given your background, his background, and his current level of willingness and proactivity in changing? So in other words, if you're in a place right now where you're not able to see that potential, is there still a possibility for that to come about? And that's a harder question to answer because, again, like I said, it depends on how willing is he to change? Is he obstinate or not? Is he open or not? Is he proactive or not? How open are you to trying again? Right? And there's no right or wrong answer to that. We would never infer that any spouse listening to this should automatically stay. Everyone here has a different level of authentic needs and level of tolerance for betrayal based on 1,000 variables that we won't get into today. And
Yes.
so it's not about it's not about you becoming the one to try again. It's about you honestly being able to assess, obviously with the professional. And even though we can't do this one-on-one, if there was only a place where you could talk to other spouses and get an idea like that, like, oh, I don't know, like a place like Dare to Connect, where you could get these kinds of that kind of feedback from other people who are dealing with this in real time, we could work with you as well. It's just one of the many benefits of the program. Please come check us out. We are offering a 2-week trial at daretoconnectnow.com. I promise we're going to keep this short, so we're wrapping this up. But those are the things that you're going to need to be asking.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can, and if the answers to those is yes, there's a potential, and yes, I might be able to change, then it sounds like you're on a good track. Then the next stage is to determine, given the circumstances and given where we are, what level of care do we need? Maybe something like Dare to Connect is the perfect fit. The one-stop shop that we need for him, for me, for us, and it's cost effective and costs like less than 2 therapy sessions a month. Maybe it needs to be a combination of that and some therapy involved. Maybe it's something completely different, but whatever it is, the beginning point is that you start shopping around, and ideally for you partners listening to this, you let him do the shopping around. And if you're an addict listening to this, you damn well better be doing the
You
shopping
better
around.
lead out. You
Okay.
better lead out. Yeah. And the thing that we always lovingly say to partners, which we know is hard, is so hard. None of you betrayed partners listening caused this trauma.
No,
You did not. It's not your fault. You weren't expecting it. It blindsided all of you. All of that said, you didn't cause this trauma, but he can't heal you. He can't. Now you have expectations of him. You have wants and needs. You need to see verifiable, ongoing, progressive evidence that he is deciding to change and put in the work. But that can't heal you. So we would lovingly invite you to consider questions like, what changes are you making to bring about your healing? Now, he can create the environment that is very conducive to you being able to do that, but only the environment, right? You didn't cause it, but you're the only one that can change it.
he provides the growth medium, ladies. You provide the growth. That's
Right.
what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
Right? Ladies and addicts who are listening to this, we just love you so much. We're so passionate about these topics. If you like the podcast, once again, you will love Dare to Connect. If you haven't tried it out, but the podcast resonates with you every day, guys, is $2.95 a month worth it to just beat this thing and be done with it? Nobody knows better than Mark and I the incessant, never-ending hell that is the half-assery of recovery in this.
It's so true.
Quit half-assing. Let's start whole-assing. That's me not being so subtle this week, but we just have a passion for your healing and for your growth. Come try it out. If you don't like it, get the hell out of there. If you do like it, like many people who signed up with our recent promotional over the holidays, we have heard probably a dozen times in the last 2 weeks in messages, Dare to Connect is awesome. I wish we tried it sooner. Don't be a I wish I tried it sooner person. Get your ass in here. DareToConnectNow.com. 2-week free trial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for being with us in another episode. We hope to see some of you, many of you in D2C. If you have questions for the PBSE podcast, go to pbsepodcast.com, click at the PBSE link or banner at the top. It'll take you into the PBSE page where you can submit questions through there, or get your questions answered immediately in our five different sessions every week with D2C.
Absolutely. If there were only a way to have access to this all the time. All right, guys, we love you. Be safe, be well, have a great week, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
All right. See ya.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.